Super. So I think we can start already slowly. So again, thank you everyone for joining today's session. It's our first day in Catalyzing Change Week, which we're focusing a little bit more about well-being, mental health, and art for social innovation. And today's session, we are going to be talking about breaking the mold, youth redesigning broken systems, and we will be going through the different hubs of the Global Shaper community that Chiara will be introducing in a second. We have a few housekeeping rules. So, of course, if you can and your connectivity allows it, we would love to see your beautiful faces on camera. You can rename yourself and add your name and company. Also, unmute when you're speaking. If you have any questions, feel free to go to the Zoom.us support, or you can write me in the chat as well and just enjoy the session. For those who are not familiar with Catalyst, Catalyst is a dynamic movement of social innovators transforming systems and driving sustainable change to advance the SDGs worldwide. We co-create spaces where the world's social innovators connect, collaborate, and contribute to transformational change. In the chat, my colleague Leslie has added a bit more of information about Catalyst. If you want to join and learn more about Catalyst, we will be hosting an informative session on Friday. So I strongly recommend you to come and learn more about Catalyst and also learn a little bit more about the youth collaboration that we have in Catalyst. And just to welcome you with the video of today.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm Lubna Dajani, Chair of Catalyst Now USA Chapter and Managing Director of Ultimate. It is my honor to welcome you to the inaugural day of CCW 2025, a day dedicated to mental health, well-being, and the undeniable role of art in social change. Around the world, mental health challenges affect nearly 1 billion people. That's right, about 13.6% of our global family. Anxiety impacts 284 million, depression reaches 264 million. And more than 700,000 lives are lost to suicide each year. The economic cost, over $1 trillion. Still, only 9% of those diagnosed with depression receive treatment. These numbers only stand to remind us how deeply this impacts each and every one of us. But today isn't only about the challenges. Today is about how we can change the narrative. Across the globe, artists and social innovators together are building models of care that are accessible, inclusive, and are rooted in real lived experiences. Technology extends our reach and unlocks our hidden creativity. And art isn't just a reflection. It's an active force in healing and connection. Art turns stigma into understanding, and it opens safe spaces for sharing. It sparks compassion and mobilizes communities for social change. Today, you will see and hear how artists and innovators are using culture and imagination through music, storytelling, and visual arts to challenge norms, change narratives, and spark new possibilities. By caring for each other and by competing to complete each other's work to a common goal, and by embracing empathy, imagination, and creativity, we can truly reimagine the systems that are shaping our world today. I welcome you, CCW 2025.
So again, thank you very much for joining. And now I will pass it over to Chiara.
Thanks so
Over
much,
to you.
Maria. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the warm welcome. Then also a welcome from my end. Welcome to Breaking the Mold, Youth Redesigning Broken Systems, our panel today, which is part of the Catalyzing Change Week, which, as you just mentioned, Maria, right, is the largest event led by social innovators and entrepreneurs. So it's truly an honor for all of us to be here and to contribute to today's agenda. I'm Chiara. I'm from Munich, based in Germany. And this week, and with this panels, we really want to exemplify bold youth leadership. We want to, in this session for the next hour, celebrate intersectional community-led solutions and also authentic voices with the really diverse and amazing panel we've got here today, not just as token representation, but show how we can engage young people as leaders, and not in a symbolic way as just participants, but genuinely because they have the lived expertise that drives equity and brings solutions to the challenges that we're faced with globally. So we want to showcase youth at the forefront of change because youth are the ones that are facing overlapping crises, as you likely will know yourself. And it's about their lived experience, our lived experience, that makes us really indispensable partners in driving systemic change and finding the solutions. And so in this session, we really want to explore how young innovators, specifically the global shapers and the global shapers community especially, are breaking the mold of outdated systems by combining that lived experience within their communities with creativity and action to drive solutions forward. And maybe to briefly add as well, because you'll see the logos on the slide, and I just mentioned it, right? The Global Shapers community, what is that even? So the Global Shapers community is the youth organization founded by the World Economic Forum and is a network of young people under 30 that are driving global dialogue, action, and change on global and local issues. And really, it's a forum in a community that empowers youth to play an active role in kind of shaping their communities, but also the world. And so in each local hub, we implement projects that are addressing pressing challenges, whether it be climate change or inclusion topics or even education. So today we've got 4 amazing panelists here with me, amazing global shapers from all across the world, from Dhaka to London, Dar es Salaam, and Chengdu in China, who in both their day jobs professionally, but also through their volunteer role with the Global Shapers community, are actively redesigning systems in education, technology, justice, and culture. And so we really want to unpack how they're all solving problems at home and then also scaling this impact globally. So with that, feel free to also drop in a chat where you are from. If you've ever heard of the Global Shapers community, maybe you're also a part of it. Would love to hear your background story as well. With that, I'll introduce you to our amazing panelists. I'll start with Farhia. Farhia is a global shaper from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and was the Dhaka Hub curator for 2024-2025, and in her professional role is programs coordinator at YY Ventures. So Farhia, maybe you can briefly introduce yourself and highlight your focus area, as well as outlining why you do what you do, both in your professional and your volunteer role.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Kiara. So I work at YY Ventures, where I am looking after entrepreneur support programs across Bangladesh, East Africa, and Latin America. So the kind of work that we do is we provide incubation and investment support to early stage entrepreneurs who are working in social areas. And we also are working to build a social business ecosystem within Bangladesh, East Africa, and Latin America regions, and hopefully globally going forward. I am an ex-founder myself, so I had a startup where we supported bachelors in Bangladesh find safe and affordable housing. Safety and affordability shouldn't be an option to choose between. So that's where I, got really interested in working in social entrepreneurship and supporting youth. And through Dhaka Hub, we've done projects, various projects with youth. One of them was Talgol, which was sports for underprivileged kids, so that they can have an alternative to, an alternative outlet for them to kind of learn and grow and create community together. The reason why I work in these regions is because I want to have a career where I can see impact and I can feel like, no, I've made a difference. And I think social business is one of the best avenues for that. And that really kind of ignites my passion to work or get out of bed on a daily basis. So I think that's one of my key motivators. I think I've talked enough. I'll hand it back over to Kiara.
Thank you so much, Farhia, and we can't wait to deep dive further into your experience in a few seconds. So thanks so much for the introduction. With that, I'll hand over to Samira, who's from London, the London Hub curator of the current year of the Global Shapers, and who herself is a social and tech innovator.
Yes, thank you so much, Kara, and thank you everyone for joining. Super excited to be here having this discussion. Yes, like Kara mentioned, my name is Samira. I'm one of the co-founders of EMS Tech. It's a nonprofit supporting women of color in tech, primarily in Sweden and the Nordics, which is where I'm originally from. I moved to the UK at the beginning of 2020, so terrible timing with COVID, to continue my career. So over the past 5 years, I've focused on supporting social impact and social entrepreneurs, so both underrepresented founders and making sure that they're receiving the support that they need in their entrepreneurial journey, but also supporting in scaling climate tech startups to tackle the climate crisis. I think throughout my journey, I'm very much a spreadsheet nerd. I'm the friend that will create a spreadsheet before going on holiday. And that goes into my professional life and into the work that I do. And I think I'm kind of a believer that efficient and equitable systems can unlock impact at scale. I think if we're able to create spaces that are kind of good, that people feel comfortable in, where people can learn, where people can make themselves heard as well, can unlock the power within them, but also kind of the wider power and the impact that they're creating as a community as well. So yeah, kind of short and sweet, my journey, and kind of my focus area.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Samira, also for all the incredible work you're doing. Can't wait to hear more about how you're driving climate tech to equity. Such important topics to be addressed. With that, I'll hand over to Modesta, who's from Dar es Salaam, and actually right now in Munich with me, as she's here in Munich for the One Young World Summit that's taking place this week. And Modesta is not only the curator of her hub of the Global Shapers in Dar es Salaam, but also the founder and CEO of an amazing initiative called Our Voices Against Harassment, which I can't wait for her to tell you all about later. But Modesta, please introduce yourself as well. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Thank you for that warm introduction. My name is Modesta Joseph, and as she said, I'm the curator of the Dar es Salaam Global Hub, but also the founder of Our Voices Against Harassment. We do use a shorter name, OVAH, so Over Tanzania in short. And I started this organization when I was 19 years old, back in 2020 as well, with COVID. It was almost the end of COVID. In Tanzania, we didn't have much of a lockdown per se. So yeah, and for the past 5 years, I have been working with a team of around 8 people to champion for gender equality in Tanzania. So we have prevention, intervention, awareness and advocacy, but also support for survivors and empowerment as well. I do enjoy my work because growing up, I knew that we needed to provide that safe space for girls and women. We need to provide opportunities for women. And so for me to be able to do that for almost 10,000 girls until at this point, that's the impact that we have made. It's really I'm so proud of that work, and so that's why I'm passionate about this work, because I'm able to provide myself and other young girls and women the future that we actually deserve. So yeah, thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Modesta. Yeah, and then lastly, we have Troy from Chengdu, China, who I actually met earlier this year while traveling to China for a conference. And Troy's the community champion of one of the big regions within China for a Global Shapers community. Not only that, he's also the founder of Curiosity, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I probably messed that up entirely, but an amazing organization that's building cultural bridges and really bringing cross-border collaboration through immersive experiences to life. So yeah, welcome, Troy. Maybe you can also just add a bit more to that.
Definitely. Thank you, Kira. It's a great pleasure to join this panel. And in my role as a community champion for Greater China region, we're supporting actually over 20 city hubs across the country on different initiatives around sustainability and social impact. And Shaper has always been my source of inspiration. It kind of also inspired me on this entrepreneurial journey. Now being the founder of Curiosity, you pronounced it 100% correct. It's actually a combination of curiosity, because what we're doing is very curiosity driven. We want to open people's minds. At the same time, we have a focus on Dao. Dao is a local philosophy or religion in China called Dao De Jing or Daoism. So it's all about the dynamic balance between yin and yang. So we see a lot of of, possibility in this kind of philosophy. But basically, in practice, we try to bring people together through our immersive educational programs. We've been taking Chinese student delegation and business delegations overseas on immersive, study tours in Switzerland, in Spain, in Singapore, with a strong focus on SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. So they understand, oh, there's so much common ground. We can actually join forces with people from other countries to tackle the common challenges. But cross-cultural exchange goes both ways. So in China, we've been hosting international visitors to the country, and we've been doing a lot of storytelling about the authentic China stories, because everyone has been reading everything about China, but mostly about politics, human rights. Those are important topics. But these are 1.4 billion people living here. We are trying to tell the authentic human story and try to facilitate the people-to-people connection, essentially building more cultural bridges. But yeah, looking forward to this conversation. And yeah, back to you, Kiara.
Thank you, Troy. Yes, so we've got a great panel here with a variety of different experiences and solutions that are being done, from supporting women to ensuring safe traffic to tech and innovation and even building cultural bridges. And so the following conversation that we're going to have is really that, a conversation, and we invite you to join as well. So please feel free to drop all of your questions or commentary that you would like to add into the chat, or raise your hand if you also would like to contribute your own experience, because we want this to be not only an inspirational session where we share some amazing solutions, but we would also love to exchange our thoughts and gain inspiration as we do so. So the following conversation is really structured in 4 segments, where first we'll talk about, the systemic challenges that we all have experienced within our own communities. And then we'll talk about community-led innovation, where we'll go into how can community-led innovation tackle these challenges that we're faced with, whether it is climate challenges or whether it be something related to inequality. And then we'll go over to how can we scale beyond local impact and maybe, make this more national or global even, to then at the end concluding it with our really personal stories, where again, especially there, I also invite you to share your story if you have something to add, and also to connect with us beyond this hour session that we have here today. So with that, let's get into systemic challenges, where, yeah, we really want to understand, what are the systemic challenges? What are the biggest broken systems and barriers in your community that youth especially face today? And here I invite, the entire panel to please share, maybe for each of you, what's the biggest challenge that you've been faced with in your community, whether it be education, health, justice, even climate change or technology gaps that you've really noticed, and how did you notice the systemic challenge that was present? Maybe we start with you, Troy.
Sure. So I've been always passionate about, cross-cultural exchange, because I personally, through my overseas travels during my study time in Singapore, I got asked a lot of questions about China. And I realized there's some misconceptions from the overseas people towards China. And it goes both ways, vice versa. In China, I came to realize that people don't really know much about what's happening around the world, because partly has to do with the barriers in language, in culture, and let's be frank, also the internet access. So I thought, but it's very important for real people to talk to each other rather than just consuming what's going on social media, sometimes misinformation. And gradually, I think, thanks to a global shaper, I had exposure to this wonderful global network of young aspiring leaders, right? I see, oh, there's so much we can do together. So I kind of took my leap of faith 3 years ago by starting my social enterprise, my consultancy, my consulting firm, and try to contribute to this challenge, which is the cultural gap. But essentially, I think we need to bring people together, just be friends, get to know each other, rather than focus on some disputes or the differences. We actually share lots of similarities. So we've been doing a lot of things. There are a lot of trial and errors, right? We also have made some mistakes along the way, but essentially we want to bring more people to the awareness. Oh, there's a lot of common ground. So we bring Chinese people to overseas, to Switzerland. We bring them to international organization, the UN office in Geneva, WTO, WIPO, Red Cross. So they gain that initial exposure from a younger age for our students to understand, oh, those are the important topics. The 17 SDGs is something 195 countries agreed upon in 2015. There are some challenges, but there's so much we can do. It's not only good for the world, that's a big topic. We're trying to bring relevancy to their day-to-day life. There are little things we can do to contribute to our community, and it actually help you with your higher education and career job opportunities, right? So that's the challenge we observe, and we're trying to, through our program, just to bring people to each other. And our role is more like the bridge, the facilitator, to provide this open-minded space where people just can interact and get to know each other. Let me share one more fun fact. You probably don't know much, know that less than 10% of Chinese population hold a valid passport, meaning less than 10% people actually travel overseas, right? If they travel overseas, mostly just to Southeast Asia. So what they know about the Western countries or other countries, mostly from the internet, but internet is very regulated in China. So they don't really have that exposure. So what we're trying to do is create more spaces, more opportunities, more platform for people from different backgrounds, different cultures to really connect and have meaningful conversations. So that's maybe some input from my end. But yeah, I'll hand it over back to you, Kiara.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for elaborating that. And so interesting to hear how you're looking to really create those conversations for both ends, visitors and, also the local community, and really drive that dialogue forward beyond differences to seeing what do we have in common and sharing that authentic experience. Maybe following up on that directly as a question, why do you believe that it's so urgent that, you as a young person take action on this topic to build these bridges, and that it's maybe not another generation that does that, but why are we maybe in a driving seat of really doing this successfully?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of changes in recent years. One thing has to do with AI, right? People also are very anxious about the changes created by AI. They in China now it's a very competitive market. So the youth unemployment rate in China has been skyrocketed, and people are afraid of being replaced by AI, by robots, and so forth. I'm also trying to curate a story where I'm telling some of my students, young people, through also we do some videos content, telling them actually there's a lot of opportunities overseas. I mean, yes, China has been doing well economically speaking for the past 40 years, but now it's super competitive. But what if we can look outwards to maybe Southeast Asia, to the Belt Road Initiative countries, to Middle East? The enterprises from China, they're trying to expanding markets, and they're actually bringing the know-how, the technologies to the relevant markets. And the young people can play a role. They're getting employed, they have better, worldview, better, career trajectory. So I feel it's the young people who are taking the lead on this journey to help China to become really globalized. China has been the factory for the world, but there's not so much like more community-based connection. But young people can really actively involved in that space. And vice versa. Again, it goes both way. We see a lot of foreigners are coming. Kira, you were in Chengdu, you were in China this year. I know one of the organizer, I think Maria was in Chengdu recently, right? China is giving away the visa-free scheme to more than about 50 nationalities. China just announced today it's giving, I think, also Denmark the visa-free scheme. So China is welcoming foreigners to come to China and see what's going on, because people read a lot about China, mostly sometimes negative, sometimes controversial. But what if you get to know some Chinese friends? You may have some grounded point of view, more authentic understanding about the China, especially the day-to-day life. I think it's crucial, and young people can really play a increasingly important role there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Troy. I really loved as well how you called out, how your work and the things that you do don't just promote empathy and cultural awareness, which in itself is incredible and amazing and so, so important, but also that this is really linked to practical benefits such as education, career development, and even building global bridges, right? And shaping the narrative about the understanding of China and Chinese youth and the opportunity and potential that lies within that. So thank you so much for elaborating on that. Then with that, coming back to the question, right, what are the biggest broken system barriers in your community that especially youth face today? Maybe let's move on to Bangladesh. Farhia, what are the things that you've witnessed and experienced and see as one of the big challenges that you're trying to tackle with the work that you do?
Yeah, there's so many challenges, right? I think one of the biggest problem is everything, especially when it's related to entrepreneurship, is so fragmented, right? When we think about support systems, when we think about financing, when we think about communities, everything is very fragmented, meaning a lot of people are working in various areas to support entrepreneurship at different levels, sectors, genders, but nobody's working together, right? Everybody's very protective of their own support system. So, for example, if I'm talking about people working to support innovative SMEs in Bangladesh, there are at least 10 organizations. They could be working together to create a pipeline of support, right? So that we are providing long-term support in all areas of social entrepreneurship for early stage entrepreneurs who are working with SMEs. But instead, everybody's doing the same thing in different areas with the same group of people, meaning they're all getting the same type of help, but they're not getting long-term support. So let's say, for example, when they're trying to move from the early stage to the next growth stage of their business, there's nobody there working, right? And then you'll see, different programs for entrepreneurship support, like incubations or acceleration programs. They're all doing the same thing for the same group of people, taking the same type of entrepreneurs. So really, are we doing actual effective work? If you think about it, what should be done is a proper ecosystem mapping to see which organization or which program can actually specialize in one area with different groups of people, or create a pipeline of support in different stages, right? So I think one of the biggest systematic challenges when we think about entrepreneurship support is that there's too many organizations working in the same space and not really creating a support ecosystem where entrepreneurs can thrive long term. And of course, another big challenge is that there's a very huge lack of local funding opportunities. Most of our funding, especially even this year, has been from foreign investments. So a lot of entrepreneurs who can't speak outside of our local language aren't able to raise funding, right? Because there aren't enough support systems locally or financing opportunities locally for these entrepreneurs. So a huge segment of our entrepreneurs are kind of left out. So the four or five entrepreneurs who can speak really well, communicate really well, have access to opportunities outside of Bangladesh are the only ones raising funds, right? Which means there's fewer success stories, which means fewer foreign investors are going to look into Bangladesh as an investment opportunities to support social entrepreneurs. So these are all kind of like a domino effect that creates even more barriers for local entrepreneurs to really sustain long term. One of the things that I would really like to work on is to create partnerships with organizations to see what can we do to kind of have our own niches or work in separate areas and not work in silos, because I don't think it benefits anybody to be very protective of the information or the knowledge that we've gained through our experience over the last decade or so that we've been working on. So yeah, that's, I think, one of the biggest systematic challenges, I would say. Another one that I see is lack of female entrepreneurship or lack of an ecosystem that can support female entrepreneurs, right? Because as a society, culturally, most women, they tend to not work because their families don't support it, or the society is not built to support women in the workforce, especially in leadership roles. While one of our biggest industry, which is the RMG industry, employs a large workforce of women, these are not in managerial or roles or any leadership roles, right? So having female entrepreneurs and having them giving them the support system to be able to follow up on entrepreneurship long term, without having to face the backlash of society, culture, as well as their own families, is very difficult unless we have long-term entrepreneurship support and long-term financing support for them to sustain, right? So that's one of the biggest systematic challenges as well, when we think about women entrepreneurship. Yeah, I think those are the two I would like to wrap up on.
Thank you so much, Farhia. And this is something I very commonly see as well in my work. So I really, really relate with, there being too many similar opposing programs, but not really serving and catering to actual need, or challenges like, no investment being available for, the actual native language in a specific country that's being funded, and it being solely dependent upon international funding, which obviously that's a challenge in itself. And then also really interesting that you kind of highlighted the lack of female entrepreneurship, where we do see when female entrepreneurship is present, so many amazing solutions emerge that tackle, very, very often such important societal challenges as well, by creating a business that truly is social and has an impact in a community. So thanks so much for highlighting these challenges. I think what you really here showcased is very systemic. It's a broken system where there are a lot of, multifaceted barriers that founders, but also youth, are faced with in Bangladesh, but something that I can say for sure is also very much to be found in other regions in the world where the same challenges exist. Maybe Samira, can you add to this as well as a founder, and having worked with so many entrepreneurs as well? Is this a challenge that even in London you're familiar with yourself as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the kind of main challenges that I was going to kind of touch on as well is the economic inequality and socioeconomic backgrounds as well, because it plays such a role in kind of the opportunities that people have. And it brings in additional invisible barriers as well. And even in a city like London, I, even before moving here, probably very naively thought like, this is London, it's a very big financial city, there's a lot of money going around. But even here, there is a lot of poverty, specifically for young people. Over a third of youth here are in poverty, and especially teenagers between the age of 15 and 19, that goes up to about 40%. So it is a very big challenge, and it creates those additional barriers, because usually in those families or in those communities, their elders are likely not in white collar sectors. And when you enter those sectors and you start kind of coming into both entrepreneurship but also employment, there's a lot of knowledge and norms that is passed down informally that isn't always taught in schools, but those communities are not always able to kind of know what those things are. What are those norms? What is that knowledge that they need to know? And I think that's part A. And I think part B as well is, I think we often have this idea that, work hard and you'll be successful. And I think a lot of the advice that we give young people, especially young people in underprivileged areas, is, work hard, do internships, you just need to really graft and, work really hard. But that isn't foolproof advice, right? That doesn't always work. And sometimes we look at successful people that have come from these areas, but I think it's important to remember that they're exceptions and not norms. They're an exception to the myth, right? We can't expect that every single child from an area like this, if they just work really hard, are going to be able to make it. And I think even, especially when we look at entrepreneurship, I had a conversation one time with another person who also works in the space. And we were discussing how, we often tell founders, we love founders that are very resourceful. We love founders that go out of their way and do things and use their own money to build their journeys and, fail fast, experiment, fail. There's no problem with failing, but failure is not equal. Some people can afford to fail. They have a bit of a support system that they can lean back on, but a lot of people don't. For a lot of people, investing 100 euros into their idea is not feasible. And that is not necessarily a reflection on that person specifically. It's a reflection of the system that they are within. So I think we also need to start creating some more spaces for these young people to actually be able to experiment and fail without feeling like they're kind of losing a part of themselves within that. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that and building on that and highlighting that even, within cities like London, that there are so many challenges, systemic challenges that need to be faced with, especially for young entrepreneurs, and also the kind of prejudice and barriers they need to break through in order to even have an opportunity of success with their business. Really appreciate it. Maybe building on that as well, as a founder, Modesta, what's your experience been like, and what are the challenges that you faced in trying to, you know, found your initiative in the past years and really drive that forward in your community?
Thank you. It was really nice to hear what Farhia and Tori and Samira were saying. And as you know, Samira was wrapping up, it kind of also reminded me of the issue that we see. For example, with the current project that my organization is implementing, we're also focusing on financial inclusion for women. And it's really difficult because you find that they don't have any history of finances. So it's become very difficult for them to be independent because you want to go to a bank and for them to take a loan. We can't take a loan because we're an organization. So we capacity build them to be able to do that for themselves. But they say, okay, you need like 6 months to build history for us to give you a loan to do any type of, maybe business for them. We want them to acquire vehicles. So that's become very difficult for them. Going back to your question about my experience. So I started my organization when I was a first year university student. So I was doing it while I was also studying remotely. Um, and so at that time it was really difficult because a business, you can have income, daily revenue to sustain yourself, but with an NGO you need to depend on fundraising and grants and donor support. And sometimes an age can become a factor where if you're a 19-year-old, how do we trust you with all this money to go and do some work that doesn't bring back money, or at the end of the day also they don't trust that you know about the problem because you are young and you don't understand gender-based violence. And so I remember when I was starting, it was very, very difficult to raise that money to do this work, but we were able to do that, and we are still pushing and be able to continue to do our work. So another experience I would like to share is around organization itself over Tanzania and how we started. We started with an aim of, ending SGBV, sexual gender-based violence. In Tanzania, 40% of girls face physical violence, 17 sexual violence, they face sexual violence, and 3 out of 10 girls experience sexual harassment, which was also the case for me. That's why I was able to, to do some effort to take action to actually fund over. And so starting up was, it was passionate, but now managing it as a 19-year-old and you have to manage a team, that's becomes very challenging and very difficult. But I think collaboration, working with other people, teamwork, and just knowing that you can only do a fraction of what is actually needed because you can't do it all by yourself. There's so many things that you don't know that you keep learning every day while you're doing the work. And so you're open to learning, you're open to collaborating with other people, you're open to sharing your experience. For example, the current project we're implementing of women and mobility, there are other organizations in Tanzania doing a similar project, but maybe targeting a different angle, maybe financial inclusion, where we are looking at safe transportation. And so you're able to also reach out and see how we can work together and push the mission forward. I would say those are the challenges that I experienced, but I was able to, and I'm still able to find ways to move forward because the work that we do is really important. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Modesta. I think kind of to summarize, from Troy, you sharing the role of youth in bridging cultural gaps, right? Through authentic exchange and global collaboration, to what you just shared, Modesta, right? And your experiences and challenges. I think you all showcased and surfaced kind of the frustration and the personal also experience that you've had with the challenges in your community that really, identify, like shape how you see things in your community as broken and are the reasons why you want to take action. Whether, Faria, that's you also highlighting the fragmented entrepreneurship support or the limited local funding in Bangladesh, it all comes down to that personal experience as well, and being basically confronted with those realities in the work you do, but also in your daily lives. So I think it becomes very clear that youth is largely impacted by these systemic challenges, whether it be in China, Bangladesh, London, or in Tanzania, or even here in Munich. I could share similar stories from my professional and voluntary work, that these are systemic challenges that we're faced with. So now that we've really seen kind of the negative end of things, of these challenges, we've already heard some of the amazing solutions that you're working on, right? The community-led innovations. And I would like to deep dive into that a little bit more. And go more into those examples that you've already shared of, your local youth-driven solutions. And maybe you can shed some more insight on, how creativity and also your lived experience, this lived frustration that you just shared about, also contributes to birthing new innovations. So maybe each of you could briefly mention, a project or a certain part of the business that you've worked on, or something that you've done with the shapers, whether professional or voluntary, a project that you're most proud of, that you think really has been able to move the needle forward in tackling these systemic challenges we've talked about, or something you're currently working on, even if it's not yet at full fruition. I don't know who would like to start. Feel free to just jump in, and we can also interact with each other on this one. But I'd love to hear more about these amazing solutions that I know you're all working on.
I can start. All right. So I think for me, one of the more project that I'm very proud of is the Pink Bajaj initiative that we are currently implementing at OVA. It's a mobility project, basically a championing for women to enter into the transportation sector, for them to become vehicle owners, but also vehicle operators and technicians in the transportation sector. So what we do is we work with survivors of violence who are aged between 19, 20 to 35 years old. We focus on women who, of course, they didn't have opportunities, maybe they didn't study until university, so they don't have jobs. They have started business before, but they didn't have enough capital, and so we are trying to also give them that opportunity. We take them to school, driving school. We ensure that they get their licenses, and we also capacitate some sort of capacity building on financial literacy, business management, even violence prevention, because we want them to provide safe transportation in public. And so far, we have 4 electric vehicles that these women use. We have 8 women on the road, and they're amazing when they share their stories. Every day they call me. I remember the first week when they started the job, they would just text me every single day, Madam, I'm here, I've gotten like a place to park, and this is happening, or I'm closing business right now, I've got this much today. That was happening, even though I'm not the person they actually report to, because my project manager does that, but they still get time to, talk to me and be like, this is happening. And whenever they have challenges, they reach out, we talk, because it's a new sector for them. We also try to find mentors, women drivers who have been driving for so long, and they know different tips and that they can give to them. Why is this important to me? The organization OVA that I founded in 2020 actually came from a personal project I did 10 years ago. And this was, I created a reporting, I was doing coding and I learned coding. And then they said, what problem would you want to solve with your coding skills? So I created a website for students to report harassment. So at the time, and even still today, students in Tanzania experience violence, like in buses, whereby conductors would harass them, even passengers would harass them, and they didn't have any say. Some of them ended up dating drivers and conductors so that they could get a seat. Yeah, it was actually insane. So for me, seeing my friends do those things, or seeing myself harassed in buses, I was like, no. I tell my parents, they're like, we can't do anything about that. You can't call like a traffic police. So I was like, okay, there's something I can do. If we all report and we take this data to these cars that are reported, we take them to the relevant bodies, and they're able to get fined, and we can do over. So I did a lot of activism, or just raising awareness about the issue, and going to schools and talking to students, and collecting those reports for like 2 years. And so for us doing this project, it reminds me of, remember that life that you said it was what you desired to have, like a safer public transport, because it doesn't mean that if I have to use something in public, it has to be bad, it has to suck, my dignity has to be, hanging in the balance. It can be good, it can be better. So having a women fleet, and this is just like, we are now just starting. We want to expand. We want to have literally a fleet of even buses so that we can actually target people who do not have a say. For example, students who are traveling, young kids going to school and all that. So for me, it's like a full cycle moment, just knowing, okay, I'm actually doing what I wanted to do in the beginning to have this safer space in public. And I use public transport until now. And so I'm able to actually relate and see how that can actually bring a lot of impact that we want. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. You're changing the entire safety environment in your community for students, for women, for youth, for people to use. That is amazing and huge. And I think it's incredible that, you've translated and transformed those horrible experiences, of gender-based violence into safe mobility solution. And I think that really, really, really clearly demonstrates exactly what we wanted to showcase today, right? How youth-led action can fill gaps that traditional institutions have overlooked or have not addressed, and that are causing really horrible challenges. So amazing to see that, you've taken the structural barriers, but your personal motivation to move that into a solution. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I've posted a link in a chat, which everyone can also view after the session, not right now, but an amazing video by the World Economic Forum made on Modesta and her solution, with further information hyperlinked on their website as well, if you'd love to learn more about that. With that, I'll open up also to the other panelists to share, any insights on community-led innovation and how you're using that to tackle challenges like Modesta in your community.
I can talk a little bit about one of the initiatives we developed at EMSTech. It's quite simple, but we started off EMSTech in 2018. As we got to 2019 and 2020, there was obviously quite a lot of conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, Black Lives Matter. So we were getting quite a lot of input and kind of case studies as well from both the US and the UK on what we could do for our organization. But we realized that we really needed to localize to the specific challenges that we had. And the discussion around race and diversity, of course, in Europe, but especially in Sweden, is very, very different from how it is in the US. Part of my personal experience and my story of why I started EMSTech was because I was going to tech events and tech festivals, and I was just seeing two other Black women or two other women of color at the next event. I'd see one from the previous event, I'd meet one new person of color, and it just kept going that way. And I just felt like there is no way we are the only few people of color within the Swedish tech industry. There just has to be more of us, which is what led to EMSTech being founded and then running the different workshops and everything that we had. But I thought this was a personal story, but we quickly realized from the rest of the community that everybody kind of felt this challenge a bit. It was either that they were going to tech events, but then just didn't feel like they had a community there, didn't know who to talk to, just didn't feel represented either on the panels or in the attendance as well. And then B, we also had quite a large part of our community that just didn't know about some of these events. And sometimes these events would come out and they would very quickly get napped up and there wouldn't be any more tickets. So we kicked off the Claim Your Space initiative, where we collaborated with tech festivals, tech conferences to acquire tickets that were reserved for our community. This happened quite organically, as most things within EMSTech was at that time. We were invited to an event or to a conference to do a workshop. We had additional tickets that we then gave to the community and got the feedback that actually this is incredible. Like, I don't think I would have been at this event if you hadn't told us about it. So that allowed us to give them the opportunity to both attend, to expand their networks, but also learn about the spaces and the places that they could and should be in, and going within the group. And I think we always try to have at least 2 or 3 tickets, also allowed them to kind of increase their confidence, their security, and kind of trust and comfort that they had within those events as well. So it was quite a small project. It was very easy for us to kind of roll it out because we were getting these tickets for our team anyways. And obviously being a nonprofit in its early days, we were just 2 people really that were doing these things. So we always had tickets left over, but it gave us quite a lot of feedback and really allowed us to kind of understand what it is that our community needs. And we've been continuing to use that to kind of allow them to feed into the sessions and the activities that we do generally, and kind of taking in their feedback as well on the spaces that they've found difficult to enter, and helping kind of us understand their needs better, and being able to kind of use our privilege a little bit as both an organization that has the kind of power of an organization, but also being the founders of that organization, or being people that had been in the industry, as my co-founders had been in the industry for quite a while. So using our power a little bit as well to kind of pull in other people too.
That's amazing. I love how you used your personal experience, right, of personal exclusion and using that as a seed for collective inclusion. And I think the example that you just gave also showcases it doesn't need to be the most complicated aspect. It can be, it can start with one ticket and then you can build it from there. And I think that, your lived experience really identified the blind spots in the system, but you really were able to take action and turn that into a structural response, right? Through community visibility and providing access to others. So that's amazing. I think that's a great initiative to show how youth-led innovation can emerge organically by addressing a gap immediately rather than waiting for an institutional reform. And that's ultimately what it's really about. In light of time, because I know we are coming already to the end of the session very soon, I still want to move on to segment 3 and 4 as well. And so with my next question, I would love to better understand kind of scale. How can we take a local solution or an idea and amplify its impact? Like what's worked for you, what obstacles have existed, and maybe also what role do networks like the Global Shapers community or even Catalyst now or other networks that are similar help in expanding your network and expanding your work and the solution into other regions beyond your community itself? I don't know, maybe Troy, would you mind wanting to tackle this one?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to jump in here. So, like I said, Global Shapers has always been my source of inspiration. I've been a shaper for over 6 years. I've been serving different roles, participating in different shaper events, also WEF events. One of the big meetings I had the pleasure of participating was the Davos meeting back in 2023. That was the one after the pandemic. It was overwhelming. It was a lot of things. It was life-changing. But I still vividly remember till this day how I felt interacting with all the Shaper participants. We had like 50 Shaper delegation at WEF annual meeting or Davos forum. It was very empowering space, especially with a group of young people. Can you imagine in a room of millionaires, billionaires, ministers? There's a group of young Shapers just hustling, interacting, meeting people. Amplifying the voices. I was truly inspired, and I felt also bring this back to your question, how do we scale it up? That was a question I was asking myself. I don't want to just keep this feeling to myself. I don't want to just tell my friends, oh, it was amazing, it was incredible. That's the words I know. But what about we can tell the story, right? How can I amplify how I feel to inspire more people? So that was kind of my aha moment. That was also about the time I started Curiosity, to spark curiosity in a Taoist way, in a dynamic way. So we've been trying to different ways to scale things up. Some worked, some didn't work, but along the way, I think at the heart of what we do is always the people-to-people connection, whether it's through our lived experiences, taking our students, partners overseas, or bring people into China, to Chengdu. We really see this can really see some compound growth over time through the stories. So I've been running this Instagram page, also social media channels called Chengdu Memo, documenting our city, Chengdu stories. So I've been doing some vlogs, some interviews with the locals, also joining forces with some big name YouTubers. So recently, last week, I hosted a 5 million follower YouTuber called Geography Now in Chengdu. It was his first time official visit to China. He chose Chengdu. So I reached out. I was like, oh, I'll take you around. We explore Chengdu for 5 days, taking him beyond the just panda, because Chengdu is known for panda. It's a home to pandas, FYI, and home for spicy food, all the good things, right? But what if we can bring the human life, the day-to-day life to this vlogger? And through his audience, 5 million people are talking about their global audience to share what's happening in Chengdu, beyond the panda, beyond the food. So I see that's something I'm quite excited. I'm still exploring, but through authentic storytelling, by documenting what we are doing, I think it can have this lingering, amplified impact to a bigger audience. I think the first step always spark curiosity. People then come, they have very good experiences. Then they have a meaningful connection with the people here, with the place here. Then we can find ways to explore synergy and work together to tackle common issues. So that's kind of my approach. It goes a full cycle. I try to work on this in an academic way, but basically 5 aspects, right? It's curiosity, then create opportunity for them to come and live the experience, highly curated, so they actually get to better understanding of this place, and connection with the people, with the culture, with the food, with the people here, so they would come back, and then amplify the content, tell the story, scale it up, then it bring more curiosity to more people globally. So that's kind of my approach. I'm still developing and something I'm super excited about. Yeah, Kira.
Thank you. Maybe Farhia as well, right? Your work spans not only Bangladesh, but globally you're active and you work with thousands of different entrepreneurs. What do you see in it being successful to scale solutions across regions and borders? Is there something that Troy said that maybe, you see similarly with or that you could build up upon? What's your experience been?
Like one of the things that I think, a lot of founders and a lot of entrepreneurs that we've worked with are not utilizing well enough that I think, Troy kind of mentioned in a way is the power of community, right? I see a lot of networks like Global Shapers, for instance, like look at us, we're connected and we're sharing ideas, we're sharing knowledge. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs could do well with getting attached to communities such as Global Shapers or Catalyst Now or any other community that are cross borders, because there's so much wealth of knowledge to learn from how entrepreneurs operate with different types of barriers and different types of systematic problems. And a lot of them are shared experiences. So of course, if somebody's doing well and have experienced success in, breaking some barrier that are similar to another person in a different region, why not communicate, right? We need to communicate with different entrepreneurs. And the power of community doesn't just extend to knowledge sharing or resource sharing, but also just having people to talk to. I think, humans are meant to build communities by, it's a biological need, I believe, having tribes or having, groups of people. I find strength in finding similar people. Just talking to them kind of helps relieve a lot of, the burden that we carry within ourselves. And I think, community is a beautiful way to kind of support entrepreneurs in different areas that, maybe entrepreneurship support programs like us can't do, right? The best we can do is create platforms or networks that can connect them with each other. And I think that's something that every organization should work on, because we support so many people from in different regions. Why not connect them to each other? So yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of an answer. Feel like I've lost myself a little bit there, but I think community is beautiful and should be shared.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you so, so much for sharing that. And that basically gives me the final kind of overflow to our last point today, which is really, we're out of time already. But before we close, let's do a really quick lightning round of, each of you sharing one concrete call to action, which basically Farhia already did, right? A challenge or a next step for youth, for allies inspired by today's discussion. What can we do? How can we, take action to ensure that youth is better supported and that youth can really break the mold and tackle the systemic challenges that we're facing, and that innovators like yourselves are better supported in doing so?
I think maybe to tie it back a little bit to what Troy was talking about with AI at the beginning of the session, and how, it's quite a big thing right now. It's making a lot of changes. And in the employment sector, especially young people are at risk because AI tends to primarily focus on taking away entry-level jobs. They are the most at risk due to AI. And I think it's important to remember that every technology, every piece of hardware or software is just a tool. It doesn't have an inherent goal. It doesn't have an inherent feeling or any thoughts or anything like that. It just takes what the user, it takes the thoughts and the intent of the user. So my kind of call to action and my challenge would be to really think about what your end goal is and what it is that you want to achieve and how tech can get you there. It's not always going to be a piece of technology. Sometimes looking at your community, looking at the skills that people have might be the solution. But even as you're using technology, just really thinking about what it is that you wanted to achieve and really questioning whether it will help you to achieve that, or if you should look at another tool to use instead.
Amazing. Thank you, Samira. Maybe Modesta, do you want to go next or try? Yeah, please go.
Yeah, maybe I just following on the AI topic. I think my call to action also has to do in the age of AI. I think there's something that won't be replaced by AI, at least not anytime soon or in my lifetime. I believe that is the authentic human connection. Because if you really think about it, everybody's unique. We have our own private database, which is not included on the AI large language model, unless you give it away, of course. But we have our own story. We made our own mistakes. We have our upbringing. We have our, feelings, emotions. So every time, I had a meaningful conversation with a friend from afar, that always gives me hope because I know this conversation can never be replaced by artificial intelligence. So I also encourage who feel anxious about AI being replaced by AI, just go out and go beyond the classroom setting, because classroom setting is the outcome of the last industry revolution. In the age of AI, we need to go beyond the classroom and explore the world and create meaningful connection. And that's something gives me a peace of mind, something gives me hope in where the humanity still shine brightly in the age of the artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Troy. Couldn't agree more. Modesta, Farhia, anything you would like to add to that?
Yep.
As a call to
Just a
action?
quick thing. One of the favorite quotes I have of Professor Mohammad Yunus is, everybody is born an entrepreneur. And I think being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean owning a business, but being an entrepreneurial spirit, which is taking an initiative and taking that risk, right? So if we see a problem within our own community, take that step forward of what you can do about it, right? And I think taking initiative is the first step and it's the most important step. And because we're all entrepreneurial at heart, I think it's a possibility for each of us to make a difference in whatever scale that might come in. So yeah, that's my take.
Amazing. Thank you.
That's very good. I think mine is also around, I'm not sure, it's kind of what Farhia is saying about do some action, take that action that you want. So for me to be more about bystander intervention. If you see something, say something. Sometimes those people who are, the survivors or victims do not have that voice. And so if you're able to say something, you can say something to create that safer space. And if you have an opportunity to have maybe to lead an institution, then be very proactive and intentional in creating a safer space in your work and the organization as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you all. So from seeing how we can use tools to having that authentic human connection to taking that true action and just being entrepreneurial as a human being and tackling the issues we see, I think we've got a lot of good advice here on how we all can take action. So I just want to say huge thank you to our incredible panelists and also to everyone here who's engaged and all the amazing comments in the chat. Thank you so much for that. Please do connect with us as well. And if you have further questions, happy to have a follow-up session as well. So thank you for the energizing session. I think we've really heard how youth around the globe are taking charge of systems change and are doing so by leading with empathy, authentic human connection, innovation and also collaborations and partnerships through the communities like the Global Shapers community. So yeah, let's take action as a result of this. Let's be inspired by this. And remind us that real progress happens when power is shared across generation and geographies, and we try to move forward together. So I think if we don't just imagine a better world, but we really try to build it, we're already a right step in the right direction. So let's go forward with that energy. Let's continue these conversations in our own communities, online, and support your local change makers, youth, and push for equity in every system that we touch, whether it be through our volunteering engagements or our work, or even just that interaction while we're, taking public transportation. So thank you so much for the session today. And with that, I hand back over to you, Maria. And thanks also to Catalyst Now for providing us with the opportunity to have this important conversation.
Thank you. And I also want to give a big thank you to our ecosystem partners and the partners and supporters of Catalyst Now, who has done this possible as well. And I strongly encourage you to share in the social media as well what is the biggest take-home message from this session. And you can tag us Catalyst Now and also use the hashtag, follow us on social media, and stay tuned because we will be uploading all the sessions recordings in our YouTube channel as well. So again, thank you for being here, and you will soon be hearing from us more. We hope to see you in the opening session today in a couple of hours, and also during the week. So feel free to register. And again, thank you very much, particularly to panelists. It has been a pleasure learning from each one's work. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.